The storm had swallowed the forest whole, the snow falling in relentless sheets that muted every sound. Each gust of wind seemed to carry with it not only the bite of winter but also something heavier, silence that pressed down against the chest, silence that made a man question if he was truly alone out there. Eli pulled his coat tighter across his chest, his breath forming clouds that immediately scattered into the storm. At his side, Max, the black German shepherd who had once served as a military canine, walked with his body low, every sense alert. His ears twitched with every sound the wind didn't make, and his nose lifted as if searching for a trace in the frozen air. They had walked this route before, the old trails outside the forgotten town, but tonight everything felt sharper, darker, unfamiliar. The trees groaned under the weight of snow, their branches bent low, casting skeletal shadows that danced with every flicker of moonlight. Eli trusted Max more than he trusted his own instincts. Years of working together had forged a bond deeper than words, one built in war zones where hesitation meant death. And now, though the war was long behind them, Max still carried that same intensity. The wind surged again, and with it came a sound that didn't belong. A faint voice, trembling and broken, weaving its way through the storm. "I'm sorry, Mom. I'll be good." Eli froze mid-step, his breath catching in his throat. His head jerked toward Max, who had already stiffened, ears forward, tail rigid. The dog released a low growl, one that rumbled through the silence, grounding Eli in the reality that he had not imagined it. "Who's there?" Eli called, his voice harsh against the wind, but softer in his own ears. The storm swallowed his words, carrying them nowhere. Then Max bolted. The leash jerked hard, nearly pulling Eli off his feet. "Max," he barked, stumbling forward, dragged by the sudden burst of determination from the dog. Max tore through the drifts, snow spraying in arcs around him, his nose locked on the ground, his body driven forward by something Eli couldn't yet see. They broke through the trees into a clearing. The playground stood half buried beneath snow and ice, swings frozen in place, the slide warped and cracked from years of abandonment. And there, at the base of the slide, was movement. Eli's stomach dropped. Max lunged forward, barking sharply, digging at the snow with his paws. Eli fell to his knees beside him, clawing at the icy mound with frozen fingers until they broke through. Beneath layers of snow and ice, curled tightly against the cold, was a small girl. Her lips were blue, her skin ghostly pale, her eyes barely open. "Oh God," Eli breathed, pulling his gloves off to touch her neck. A faint pulse. Weak. Fragile. But there. The girl's lips parted. A whisper, so faint he had to lean closer to hear it. "Don't let him find me." Eli's chest constricted. He wrapped his coat around her, lifting her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, her small body limp against him. Max pressed against his side, whining softly, his eyes fixed on the girl as if guarding her already. The wind howled again, and in it Eli swore he heard something else. A crunch of snow, heavy footsteps somewhere beyond the trees. His grip on the child tightened. He looked down at Max. The dog's ears flicked back, his body tense, his growl deeper now. Eli knew that look, danger was near. "We've got to move," Eli whispered. With the girl cradled against his chest and Max leading, they pushed back into the forest, the storm closing around them like a shroud. Every step forward was a battle against the snow, every breath a reminder of how close she was to slipping away. The whisper echoed again in his memory, threading through the storm louder than it should have been. "Don't let him find me." And Eli knew, whatever had been chasing her might not be far behind. The forest closed in tight as Eli forced his way through the snow, the girl bundled against his chest, her head resting limply on his shoulder. Max trotted just ahead, weaving left and right, nose low, his movements sharp with purpose. Each bark that tore from his throat ricocheted through the storm like a flare. Eli's lungs burned with the effort. The girl weighed so little it was frightening, yet every step felt heavier with the thought of what she had whispered. "Don't let him find me." Her words clung to him, replaying with every gust of wind, a warning that wasn't fading. He glanced behind him more than once. The storm twisted the trees, shadows moving in ways they shouldn't, and with every crack of ice or crunch of snow, his pulse spiked. Somewhere back there, something followed. He couldn't see it, but Max knew. The dog's growls grew more insistent, his body low and rigid each time Eli faltered. At last, the outline of a cabin appeared between the trees. The roof sagged under the weight of snow, the windows dark, the door crooked against its frame. It wasn't much, but it was shelter, and right now, shelter meant survival. Eli pressed forward, boots breaking through the drifts. Max stopped suddenly, planting himself in front of the door. His growl deepened, eyes locked on the wood as if he expected something on the other side. "Not now," Eli muttered, shifting the girl in his arms. "We don't have time." He reached for the handle, but before his glove touched the splintered wood, a faint voice carried through the storm again. "Don't open the door." Eli froze. His breath snagged, eyes darting to the child in his arms. But she hadn't moved. Her eyes were half shut, her body slack. The voice had come from the cabin. Max barked once, sharp and violent, jerking at the leash. Eli's grip tightened, his chest thundering. The whisper came again, thinner now, as though spoken through tears. "Don't let him find me." His mouth went dry. He pressed his forehead briefly against the doorframe, snow dripping into his eyes. He wanted to push forward, to get her inside, to believe that warmth and walls would make the difference. But something in that whisper rooted him to the spot. The forest groaned behind him, branches snapping under weight that wasn't the storm. Eli spun, eyes wide, but the trees revealed nothing, only the stretch of white and shadow. He whispered under his breath, "We don't have a choice." With one last push, he shouldered the door open. The wood shrieked in protest, snow tumbling from the roof as it cracked against the frame. Max shot in first, barking so hard it rattled the empty cabin. The interior was worse than Eli had hoped. The air smelled of damp wood and ash long dead in the fireplace. Broken furniture lay scattered across the floor, dust clinging to every surface. The lantern he found on a table flickered weakly to life when he struck it, throwing trembling shadows across the room. He set the girl on a tattered couch, pulling his coat tighter around her small body. Her lips quivered, a faint sound breaking from her throat, half sob, half whisper. Eli leaned close, straining to hear. "Please, don't let him in." Eli's skin prickled. He looked at Max, who had planted himself by the door, muscles rigid, teeth bared at the wood. The dog growled steadily, eyes unblinking. Something pressed against Eli's chest that had nothing to do with the cold. He crouched by the girl, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. "You're safe," he whispered, though he didn't believe it himself. "You're safe now." But as the storm howled outside and the cabin creaked in protest, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that both the girl and the dog knew something he didn't. The storm rattled the old cabin walls, seeping through every crack as if the night itself wanted to come inside. Eli paced near the door, his rifle slung across his shoulder, eyes flicking between the girl lying curled on the couch and Max still posted by the entrance. The dog hadn't moved since they entered. His body was a coiled spring, ears sharp, growl vibrating in his chest like a warning Eli had no words for. The girl stirred, a faint whimper spilling from her lips. Eli was at her side in an instant, kneeling, brushing frost from her hair. Her eyes opened slightly, glazed and fearful. "Don't let him find me," she whispered, voice fragile, breaking against the silence. Eli swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Who?" he asked softly. "Who's after you?" But her gaze drifted, unfocused. She closed her eyes again, retreating into some place Eli couldn't follow. The wind outside howled louder, banging against the shutters. Max barked suddenly, sharp and violent, lunging at the door with enough force to rattle the hinges. Eli's pulse spiked. He gripped his rifle tighter, eyes darting to the windows. A sound answered from the darkness beyond the walls, slow, deliberate footsteps crunching in the snow. Not the storm. Not the trees. Something else. Eli's breath stilled. He edged closer to the window, lantern light casting a faint glow into the snow beyond. Shadows shifted, distorted by the storm, but nothing clear enough to name. Max barked again, his snarl unrelenting. The dog's body trembled with tension, every instinct locked on whatever lingered outside. "Stay with me," Eli whispered, his voice firmer now, though his hands betrayed the tremor running through him. The footsteps stopped. Silence pressed against the cabin like a weight. Eli could hear nothing but his own pulse thudding in his ears. Then, softly, almost too faint to catch, the whisper came again. Not from the girl this time, but from just beyond the door. "Don't open it." Eli jerked back, rifle snapping up. His breath tore from his lungs, misting in the cold air. He looked to the girl, her eyes were closed, her chest rising weakly. It hadn't been her. The dog lunged at the wood again, snarling, teeth flashing in the flickering light. Eli pressed his back against the wall, sweat prickling beneath his jacket despite the freezing air. He gritted his teeth. "Who are you?" he shouted into the storm. "What do you want?" No answer. The silence grew thicker. Max's barking filled it, the sound echoing through the hollow cabin. Eli forced himself to breathe, to steady the tremor in his hands. He moved back to the girl, kneeling once more. Her face twitched, her lips parting with another broken sob. "Please," she murmured faintly, "don't let him find me." Eli shut his eyes for a moment. The same words. The same fear. He looked down at Max, who hadn't left his post. His partner's eyes glinted amber in the dim light, fixed on the door as if the wood itself were alive. Outside, the storm shifted again. And with it came the unmistakable sound of movement, something circling, slow, deliberate. Eli's grip on the rifle tightened until his knuckles burned. He didn't know what was waiting beyond that door. He only knew one thing with certainty: whatever it was, Max wanted it nowhere near the girl. The lantern flickered against the cabin walls, shadows bending and stretching like they carried secrets of their own. Eli sat on the edge of the couch, his rifle resting across his knees, eyes locked on the girl. She lay curled beneath his coat, her breath shallow but steady. Every so often, her lips moved, fragments of whispers escaping as though her mind couldn't let go of the fear. Max hadn't left his station by the door. The dog's growl had settled into a low rumble, constant, vibrating through the wood like a warning bell. His body leaned forward, paws pressed firm, tail stiff. Eli knew that stance well. Max was telling him danger was closer than the silence admitted. Suddenly, the cabin groaned. Wood shifted, heavy and deliberate, as if someone pressed a weight against the outer wall. Eli shot to his feet, rifle raised, his breath caught in his throat. Max erupted in barks, savage and unrelenting, teeth bared at the door. "Stay back!" Eli shouted, his voice cutting into the storm outside. The sound faded. Only the wind answered, whistling through cracks in the boards. Eli swallowed, sweat dampening the back of his neck. He crouched again beside the girl, brushing a strand of hair from her pale face. Her eyelids fluttered, her lips parting just enough for words to slip through. "Help me," she whispered, voice fragile, frayed with exhaustion. Eli froze. It was the first time she had asked, not warned. The plea tore at him, leaving him more unsettled than any whisper at the door. "I'm here," he murmured, though the weight in his voice betrayed the uncertainty beneath. "You're safe now." Max barked again, sharper this time. His body jerked toward the wood, claws scratching against the floorboards. Eli snapped his gaze to the door, his rifle rising instinctively. The cabin shuddered with another heavy thump. Dust fell from the rafters, and the girl whimpered, curling tighter into the coat. "Help me," she repeated, her voice cracking with desperation. Eli's pulse hammered. He wanted to believe she was safe within these walls, but Max's fury and the pounding against the door told him otherwise. He moved slowly to the window, keeping low. His eyes scanned the storm. Snow whirled so thick it blurred the tree line into a wall of shifting white. But in that haze, something darker moved. A shape. Broad. Still. Watching. Eli's breath caught. He lowered instinctively, his back pressed against the wall, rifle held tight. His heart thudded loud enough he thought it might betray him. The shape didn't move. It didn't need to. Its presence was enough. "Help me," the girl whispered again, more urgent this time, trembling as though she sensed what he saw. Max growled so deeply now it rattled Eli's bones. The dog snapped at the wood, desperate to break through it and face whatever was outside. Eli closed his eyes briefly, whispering to himself. "God, what are we up against?" He turned back to the girl, her small body trembling beneath his coat, her lips forming the same plea over and over. "Help me, help me." Eli looked at Max, at the door straining against the storm, then back at the unmoving shadow beyond the window. Every instinct screamed that he had to make a choice, and every second he waited, the danger pressed closer. Eli's hand trembled against the rifle as the girl's whispers clawed at his chest. "Help me." Over and over, her fragile voice cut through the storm outside and the silence inside. He had heard pleas before, on battlefields, in ruined towns, but this one carried something different. It wasn't just desperation. It was terror. Max barked violently at the door, throwing his entire weight forward. The leash snapped taut in Eli's grip, dragging burns into his glove. The dog's body quivered with fury, muscles rigid, teeth bared at the wood as if an enemy were pressing on the other side. "Easy!" Eli snapped, yanking him back. But Max wouldn't stop. His bark was frantic, unyielding, a living alarm that only sharpened the panic pressing against Eli's mind. Another slam shook the cabin, heavier than before. The frame rattled, snow showering down from the roof beams. Eli raised the rifle, planting his feet firm. "Stay away from her," he shouted, his voice cracking in the empty room. The storm swallowed his words. And then, a new sound. A man's voice, low and rough, carrying through the cracks. "She's not yours to save." Eli froze, his pulse slamming through him like a hammer. His eyes darted to the girl. She curled deeper beneath his coat, sobbing harder, trembling so violently he thought she might shatter. Max lunged at the door again, snarling with a rage Eli had rarely seen in him. The dog's body was pure instinct, and that instinct screamed of danger. Eli steadied the rifle with both hands, his voice raw. "If you've hurt her, you'll answer to me." The cabin answered with silence. Only the storm raged, the snow hissing against the glassless window. Then the child's voice pierced it all, high, breaking, desperate. "Help me. Please." Eli's body moved on instinct. He slammed his shoulder against the door. The wood cracked, splinters biting into his arm. He hit it again, harder. Max joined him, body crashing into the frame, snarls vibrating through the air. The hinges screamed, but the door held. From behind it came the scrape of heavy wood, as if furniture was being dragged into place. A lock thrown shut. "Open it!" Eli roared, kicking against the frame. The echo thundered through the cabin. The girl screamed again, closer now, as if pressed against the door itself. "Help me!" Her hand shot through a jagged crack, fingers raw and trembling. Eli reached without hesitation, brushing her cold skin with his glove. "I've got you." But another voice bled through, rumbling, thick with menace. "You'll regret this." Eli's stomach turned. His grip tightened around the rifle, but he didn't release her hand. He looked down at Max. The dog's amber eyes glared at the door, his body straining to tear through the wood. "We're getting her out," Eli whispered through clenched teeth. He stepped back, raised his boot, and drove it into the door. The frame splintered again, cracking wider. Snow tumbled in from the roof with each impact. Max lunged alongside him, barking in violent bursts. The girl cried out, her sobs shaking the air. "Help me!" Eli's throat ached, but his voice was steady now, sharp with resolve. "I'm here." He lifted his boot again, ready to strike one final time, when the snow shifted behind him. Heavy steps. Slow. Deliberate. Right at his back. Eli froze, breath caught, rifle jerking around. Max spun with him, snarling into the storm through the open window. And then, from the forest outside, carried on the wind, came a whisper. "Don't open it." It wasn't the child. It wasn't the man. It was something else, right behind him. Eli's body went rigid, his boot frozen mid-strike against the door. The whisper that drifted from behind him cut colder than the storm itself. "Don't open it." Not weak, not trembling, but firm, commanding. He spun, rifle snapping toward the trees. The snowstorm howled, blurring his vision, but he saw nothing. No figure. No shape. Just shadows bending with the wind. Max snarled beside him, teeth flashing, body twisting violently between the door and the forest. The dog barked so sharply it cracked through the storm like gunfire. He wasn't just alert now, he was frantic, refusing to let Eli make a move. Behind them, the child sobbed louder, her words cracking through the wood. "Help me, please." Eli's throat tightened. He looked down at Max, who lunged toward the door, then back toward the forest, caught in his own war. Eli's gut twisted. The dog didn't know which danger to fight first, and neither did he. "Show yourself." Eli bellowed into the storm, his rifle steady though his arms trembled. His voice echoed, swallowed by snow. The only answer was the girl's desperate cry. "Help me!" Eli clenched his jaw. He stepped closer to the door, his shoulder bracing against the splintered frame. "I'm coming," he whispered, his voice cracking. Max lunged again, leash cutting into Eli's gloves, body quaking with resistance. His amber eyes were wild, torn between two poles. Eli's heart slammed. He didn't have the luxury of doubt anymore. He reared back and drove his boot into the door. Wood shrieked. Hinges tore. The gap widened. The girl's sobs rang out clearer now, raw and panicked. Her hand pressed through the splinters again, reaching, trembling. Eli reached back instantly, clutching her frozen fingers. "Hold on. I've got you." But then came another voice. The man's again. Rough, guttural, curling out from the dark behind the girl. "She's mine." Eli's skin crawled. His grip on the rifle tightened, the barrel swinging toward the door even as his hand refused to let go of hers. Max erupted into a frenzy, barking savagely, claws ripping into the wood. His whole body screamed to tear through and attack whatever lay inside. Eli's breaths came sharp, chest aching with the weight of decision. From outside, the storm shifted again. A shadow flickered between the trees, closer now, heavier. Steps pressed into the snow, slow and deliberate, circling toward the cabin. Eli's eyes darted between the splintered door and the dark treeline. His partner was losing his mind beside him, the girl begged for rescue, and something else stalked the perimeter. The word pressed into his ears again, louder this time. "Help me." Not one voice. Many. Layered, overlapping, spinning through the storm until he couldn't tell the child from the echoes. Eli's stomach dropped. His skin prickled with unease. He jerked his head back toward the forest, rifle raised, searching for the shadow. The figure stepped forward, just a stride into the pale moonlight. Large. Broad. Shoulders like stone. And then it stopped, watching. Eli's breath caught in his throat. He was trapped between two threats. Both waiting. Both demanding. Max barked until his voice broke, his body lunging one way, then the other, leash tearing against Eli's grip. Eli steadied his rifle, his own voice a ragged growl. One more step and I fire. The shadow didn't move. The child sobbed louder, pounding on the wood with tiny fists. Help me! Eli's boot slammed into the door again. The frame cracked wider, the hinges screaming under the strain. And then, the figure in the trees began to run. Snow exploded under its weight. The sound tore through the storm, heavy, closing in fast. Eli's chest heaved. His rifle snapped toward the forest. Max lunged with him, barking so violently it shredded the silence. The girl shrieked again behind him, broken, frantic. Help me! The words swirled around him now, layered, distorted, overlapping into chaos. And Eli realized with horror, no matter which way he turned, he was already too late. Snow whipped in violent circles around the cabin as Eli steadied his rifle, heart hammering so loud it drowned out his thoughts. The sound of pounding footsteps through the trees shook the ground, closer with every second. Max barked furiously, his body straining so hard against the leash that Eli nearly lost grip. Behind him, the cabin door rattled, wood groaning under pressure from the inside. The girl's scream pierced through, raw and terrified. Help me! Eli twisted, his mind tearing in two directions. The girl's desperate cry clawed at his chest, but the forest thundered with danger closing in. He had seconds, maybe less. Then the whispers surged back. Not one voice. Not two. Dozens. Spilling from the trees, the snow, the very air. Help me, help me, help me. They overlapped until they became unbearable, a cacophony of pleading that circled him, pulling from every direction. Some were faint and broken, others harsh and guttural, but all carried the same words. Max spun in place, barking into the storm, snapping at the shadows, growl shaking through the air. His amber eyes darted left, then right, never locking on one place because the danger pressed from all sides. God, Eli muttered, his voice ragged. He swung his rifle toward the tree-line. The shadow he'd glimpsed earlier barreled closer, massive in the storm. Stop! Eli roared, voice raw, echoing against the trees. The figure did not stop. The girl's sobs cut through the noise, higher now, shaking. Help me! Her hand shot through the crack in the door again, fingers trembling violently, reaching for him. Eli reached back, clutching her cold hand. I've got you. But the whispers swirled louder, building into a frenzy. Help me, mine, don't let him. Their distortion twisted the air. Eli's stomach lurched as he whipped his gaze toward the forest again. The figure loomed larger now, only yards away. For the first time, enough light broke through the storm to reveal its size, towering, broad-shouldered, faceless in shadow. Stay back! Eli shouted, rifle raised. His voice cracked, fear seeping through. The figure halted, half-shrouded in snow. The whispers didn't stop. They swarmed around him, tangled, screeching. Max lunged at the tree-line, his bark shaking his entire body, then jerked back toward the door, torn between protecting Eli and tearing into the forest. His fury echoed through the cabin, colliding with the whispers until Eli thought his head might split. Where are you? Eli roared into the storm. Show yourself. The voices answered all at once, screaming. Help me! The door splintered wider, the girl's pale face pushing through the gap, eyes wet, her sobs breaking into screams. Eli froze, breath catching. For the first time, he saw her eyes fully, and something in them twisted his stomach. They weren't just afraid. They were hollow, almost too wide, as if something else hid behind them. The girl sobbed louder, shaking her head. "Please!" The storm swallowed his thoughts whole. Max yanked violently toward the forest again, snarling, barking until his throat tore. Eli's chest tightened. His boot lifted, ready to strike the door down, but the whispers screamed in unison, layered into one demand. "Help me!" It was no longer a plea. It was a command. Eli's vision blurred, his chest heaving as he staggered between the two poles. The girl's hand clutched his glove. The figure in the forest stood waiting. And he knew the storm was forcing him into a decision he couldn't escape. The night split open with sound. Whispers tore through the trees like a storm of their own, layered and distorted, each one screaming the same two words. "Help me! Help me! Help me!" Eli staggered under the weight of it, his rifle trembling in his hands. The noise pressed in from all sides, suffocating, spinning the cabin in chaos. Max barked so furiously it shook his entire body, his paws carving trenches into the snow as he lunged against the leash with relentless desperation. The cabin door shuddered, hinges squealing under violent blows from within. The girl's voice rose above the madness, sharp, panicked, cracking with fear. "Help me! I'm here!" Eli roared back, his throat raw, words swallowed by the torrent of voices. The whispers circled faster, multiplying, crashing against each other until they became a wall of noise. Some were soft and broken, others shrieked with jagged edges, but all demanded the same thing. Eli pressed harder into the door, his boots slamming against it. Splinters flew, the crack widening. Through it, he saw her again, pale face streaked with tears, lips trembling, eyes wide with terror. Her hand shot out once more, shaking as it clutched at him. "Please!" He seized it without hesitation, his glove wrapping around her frozen fingers. "Hold on. I've got you." But the forest surged alive behind him. Shadows twisted between the trees, flickering in the blizzard. Dozens of shapes now. Too many. Some hunched low, others impossibly tall, moving with jerks that didn't belong to anything human. Max spun away from the door, snarling at the forest, barking so violently his body shuddered. His amber eyes glowed with warning. He pulled toward the trees with every ounce of his strength, leash straining like it would snap. Eli's pulse roared in his ears. He looked from the girl's desperate hand to the shadows closing in, his mind a blur. The whispers screamed louder, overlapping until the words bent into one distorted chant. "Help me! Help me! Help me!" Eli's chest constricted. His skin prickled with dread. He forced his gaze back toward the child. Her lips trembled as she whispered again, this time softer, broken, begging. "Don't let him find me." His breath tore from his lungs. The same words. The same warning. But which voice was real? Max lunged so violently the leash burned against Eli's gloves. The dog snapped at the storm, desperate to drag Eli away from the cabin, to stop him from opening the door. The girl's sobs ripped through the noise, trembling, fractured. "Please!" Eli closed his eyes for half a breath, his body caught in two worlds. One hand on the rifle. The other clutching the girl's. The whispers collapsed all at once. The storm went silent. Eli's chest heaved in the sudden stillness, his ears ringing. Max froze, caught mid-snarl, his body rigid, eyes wide. The girl's hand shook against his glove. Then, in the silence, one voice rose. Clear. Steady. Commanding. "Choose." Eli's throat tightened. His knees weakened beneath the weight of it. He forced his eyes toward the door, the child trembling in his grasp, her sobs breaking against the wood. "Please," she whispered again, softer, more fragile. Max growled, low and guttural, his gaze fixed on the forest as though the trees themselves were waiting. Eli's stomach twisted. His breath tore ragged from his chest. "God help me," he whispered. Because he knew, he couldn't run from the choice any longer. The snow seemed to pause midair, each flake suspended in the heavy silence that followed. Eli stood rooted to the floor, his breath ragged, eyes darting between the splintered door and the storm outside. The echo of that single word still pressed into his skull. "Choose." The girl's hand clutched his glove tighter, trembling with desperate strength. Her voice, barely a whisper now, broke through the stillness. "Please, don't leave me." Max bristled at his side, teeth bared, growl vibrating like thunder in his chest. His entire body strained toward the treeline, every instinct screaming that danger lay beyond those snow-shrouded shadows. Eli's jaw clenched until his teeth ached. He looked at the child, then at his partner, his heart slamming against his ribs. Every choice he could make felt wrong, but doing nothing was worse. "Choose what?" he rasped into the storm, voice torn raw. But the night gave him no answer. The door creaked again. Through the widening crack, the girl's pale face appeared, streaked with dirt and tears. Her lips quivered as she pleaded once more. "Help me." Eli's breath shuddered. His boot lifted, bracing for another strike to break the door. The forest stirred. The shadows pressed closer, shapes shifting in the snow. Dozens now, encircling, tightening their hold. Max lunged toward them, his bark tearing through the silence, echoing like warning shots. The leash cut into Eli's hand, straining against his grip. The girl screamed, high and shrill, her tiny fists pounding against the wood. "Please! Help me!" The voices rose again, surging all around him, layered and distorted. "Choose! Choose! Choose!" Eli's stomach twisted. His vision blurred with sweat and snow. He forced himself forward, ramming his shoulder against the door again. The frame cracked wider, the girl's face clearer now, her eyes staring directly into his. For the first time, Eli saw something shift in them. Not just fear. Not just pain. Something deeper. Something hollow. He froze, his hand tightening on the rifle. His chest heaved. "What are you?" he whispered, the words escaping without thought. The girl's lips trembled, then curved, just faintly. Not into a smile, not into a sob. Something in between. Eli staggered back, his stomach flipping. Max snarled with violent intensity, lunging again toward the trees as if trying to tear Eli away from the door. The girl cried out once more, her voice no longer fragile, but layered, sharp, cutting. "Choose!" The word ripped through the cabin, overlapping with the storm, with the whispers outside, with everything. Eli's heart slammed. His breath tore ragged. His body shook as he pivoted between two worlds, the trembling hand of a child reaching for him, and the storm outside where shadows closed in like predators. The dog barked with such ferocity it shook the walls. The girl screamed again, eyes hollow, voice broken. And Eli knew with absolute certainty that he had no time left. Whatever decision he made now would define everything. The storm roared, yet inside Eli felt a silence sharper than any sound. His chest heaved, rifle trembling, every muscle pulled taut between two choices. The child's hand still clutched his glove through the splintered door, her sobs spilling out with ragged desperation. Behind him, Max strained toward the treeline, his barks cracking through the storm, a living warning that could not be ignored. The word echoed once more, pressing against Eli's skull, steady, unrelenting. "Choose!" Eli's breath tore through his lungs. His jaw locked. His mind screamed for clarity, but none came. The girl's voice softened suddenly, trembling, fragile. "Please, don't let him find me." Eli staggered back from the door, his eyes burning. He turned to Max, his partner's amber gaze locked on the trees, body rigid, growl a constant vibration through the floor. Eli whispered, half to himself, half to the only soul he trusted. "We go together. Always." With a roar, he drove his boot into the door one last time. The hinges screamed, the wood cracked, and the frame splintered wide enough to force his way through. Inside, shadows clung to the walls like living things. The air was thick, stale, carrying the faint stink of damp ash. In the corner, curled small and fragile, the girl huddled against the floorboards. Her face streaked with tears, her eyes wide and glassy. Max bolted in first, barking with a fury that rattled the cabin. He planted himself between Eli and the small door at the far end of the room, the one half hidden under broken furniture. His growl deepened, vibrating with a primal warning. Eli crouched by the girl, pulling her into his arms. Her skin was ice, her breath shallow. She pressed her face into his chest, whispering once more. "Help me." "You're safe," Eli murmured, though his throat burned with the weight of the lie. "I've got you now." The small door rattled once. Twice. Then stopped. Eli's stomach tightened. He didn't move. Max stood guard, every muscle taut, teeth bared, a low rumble filling the air. And then, from behind that door, came the voice again. The man's. Low, guttural, deliberate. "You made your choice." Eli's grip on the girl tightened. His finger hovered over the trigger. He whispered through clenched teeth, "If you come near her, you'll answer to me." But the door stayed shut. Silence pressed heavy on the room. The girl's sobs softened against his jacket, her tiny arms clinging around his neck. Her voice slipped out, broken but calmer now. "Thank you." Eli's chest ached, but he forced a steady breath. He lifted her in his arms, standing tall once more. Max fell into step at his side, still watching the door until the last possible second. They pushed back into the storm. Snow wrapped around them instantly, but it no longer carried voices. The forest stood still. The shadows had retreated. Eli looked down at the girl, her eyes drifting shut against his chest, her lips trembling with exhaustion. Max brushed close against his leg, his warmth grounding Eli against the cold. And then, as the storm thinned, the final whisper came. Not desperate, not panicked, but soft. "At peace. Thank you, Dad." Eli's throat closed, his vision burning. He held her tighter, his partner steady beside him. He knew this night, this choice, this whisper would stay with him for the rest of his life. And maybe, it would stay with you too.